Right on time, buddy.
Trying to be, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting up early to do this podcast for me today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you kind of pushing me to get up early. Always have.
Well, I always have, but you can't. What I've kind of figured out in life is, you can't really push people too much to change who they really are. That kind of the fabric, and you like to sleep in. And I don't even want to say you like to sleep in. I feel like you're just made that you need to sleep in. And to be honest with you, I would too if I didn't have an 11-month-old who didn't sleep. So, who am I to criticize?
Yeah. And it's not even really, I think about that a lot because I've always wanted to get up early, but I think it's more that I like staying up late.
We talked about that before. Some people are actually perform better at night or in the morning is just based on how you're wired. I think people generally kind of gravitate towards that, whether it's a personality trait. What I have figured out over the people I've met over the course of my life, and you would fall into this category, is I've found that the more creative the individual, the later they like to stay up.
Really?
Yep. They're usually, most of their creativity or production, or where it comes to like hobby or work, usually comes after like 7 or 8 p.m.
I do think that's very common, and I know there's supposedly personality types that are like real and defined by science, and maybe I'll try and look that up and put it in the show notes if anybody cares. But there's like something like wolves and bears or whatever, and some people get up early by nature, and others don't. So I don't know, and that obviously applies to my workouts, and I'm just much better working out in the afternoon, but I've been trying to get back in the groove after Chattanooga, and I went out and worked out yesterday. And so I thought for a minute we could talk about how workouts can either boost or strip your confidence, and probably why you shouldn't pay attention to them, to that reaction.
Oh man, there's a lot.
I came back with my tail between my legs yesterday after a pretty simple little bike ride.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just sort of this, I don't know, man. I feel like maybe I felt really good going into Chattanooga. And of course, there's been a lot of things going on with my personal life, of course, but, and driving back and forth and losing the groove. But, I definitely feel weak. I still feel weak and fatigued a little bit in general. So.
Well, you sound a little under the weather as well.
Well, yeah. It was funny because you were talking about our last recording, how you had sort of the gunk after a run or whatever. And it was not maybe like 12 hours later that I started getting a sore throat, and I just I'm on my way back. So I feel like I'm in that spot where I'm clearing out again, and I feel pretty good, but I sound probably like crap.
No, you don't sound like crap, but
or
you
sexy.
Sound like you got a little. There you go. Yeah, depending on what you're looking for. You definitely fit that category.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, you got anything to say on that issue? You said it before. We texted a little bit about.
Yeah,
don't judge a race by its. What was the?
Well, I just said you should never choose to go pro or retire based on one workout or race.
Yeah.
It's you gotta look at everything, look at the whole forest, not just the tree, and I think everybody they either get way up or they get way down, or they get super motivated, or they look to the next thing, because we genuinely are really good at talking ourselves in and out of things based on one minute workout or interaction with somebody. It's almost like that first impression thing. It's like once you make this first impression with somebody, whether it's good or bad, it really takes time to either change your opinion of somebody, or I had a great first impression, let me it's going to take me a while to actually think negative of you, versus I got a bad negative impression. The next few times you see him, you're going to kind of be on guard. I just don't really think, I kind of like that person. And I think workouts are the same way, as we just tend to overly attach ourselves, and like I say all the time, become a prisoner of the moment. When it comes to making rash decisions, in a vacuum. And I think it's always a good idea to always sleep on any kind of a big decision, because more often than not, your mind and attitude is going to change your whole outlook on whatever it is. because workouts are, to be honest with you, pretty meaningless when it comes to the whole scope of life. But, sleep on it, see how you feel the next day, and then that usually will kind of give you at least a better, more objective answer.
Yeah, I think sleep on it is probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really kind of taken that if, I don't follow a lot of mantras and stuff like that, but that's certainly one of them. I remember when I was in the corporate career and we had some kind of like, I don't know, controversial thing come up with another company we were working with, and they like trashed us or something, and I came back with a scathing email and ran it by my boss first, and he goes like, he's like, maybe we got to sleep on this one first.
Mm-hmm.
And it really saved a lot of problems. So that definitely has to apply to training and working out. And I got off that bike yesterday and I was like, there's no way I'm doing Muncie, and I still probably won't, because it does feel like I would be rushing it.
Mm-hmm.
But in a weird sense, I got a kind of an undertow of kind of optimism too. So I was sort of looking a little more long range, maybe doing a full later in the year. So, because I know that I'm in fairly good place, but I'm just not ready to ramp it right back up again and go after Muncie in a way that I probably would want to. And I'd hate to go up there again and do the same race that I just did. And that would be a bummer. Because, it's the
sometimes break. Exactly. I shared this with one of my newer athletes earlier this week. I said sometimes the very best race of your entire year is the one that you choose not to do.
Yeah,
because it can totally change the landscape of what you're going to be able to accomplish, how you're going to be able to recover, the focus you can put on training, and have the patience to wait is like one of the biggest things that I think we all struggle with, is like waiting to race and waiting, not feeling like we're such in a hurry, to do it, and then we're just going to beat ourselves up more, and then we're going to want to do it again, so we're going to rush, and they're going to fall in the same category, versus what's wrong with just like putting in another 4, 8, 12 weeks in between races versus rushing back into it after 6, to be honest with you, more than likely get the same result.
Yeah.
Give or take a little bit. It's like, what are you really going to find out? That you are the same, that you improved a little bit, or do you want to give yourself time to actually figure out what I did wrong, or what you did wrong, or what we did wrong, apply it, fix it, and then actually see what can come of those adjustments?
Yeah, and it really goes back to one of our first podcasts when we were talking a lot about life events and things like that, and I just feel like with me, with the stuff that's been going on, and then I'm starting to feel different things pop up between now and Muncie. Plus we got the camp, and there's a lot of stuff that I feel like, in my traditional addictive personality, I just feel like I got to pull back, because the first thing I think about, my first reaction, knee jerk, is always to add something to the mix to make me, you know what I mean? I'm sure you understand that more than anybody.
I totally understand. Yeah,
just totally to add another.
Just let's do another one. I got a headache. 2 Advil. How about 3? Yeah, I mean that's just I feel you on that one.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of a lot going on, as we posted yesterday and by the way, join our closed Facebook group by searching Crushing Iron group on Facebook, and we got a lot of good conversation going on there, a lot of positive energy, and we posted yesterday about who's racing this week, and you've got a lot going on. You got a lot of athletes starting to hit the trails, man. So
yeah, a ton.
What's going on in your mind as a coach these days? I know it's starting to pick up, and
man, it's funny you bring like a lot of stuff up. I wanted to not shift, but I really wanted to make this podcast about like the attitude of gratitude, and you shared something yesterday that I thought was just awesome with your post on Facebook, because you've been going through a lot lately, and you had a line in there that I just that I loved. Love hard, train hard, and relax hard with people you care about. And you've been going through a rough time here lately with the loss of your friend Pete, and while it's definitely different. A different kind of loss, we have to actually put down one of our dogs later today.
Oh, man.
Izzy, who's been with Allie for 18 years, and for she and I together the last 4 or 5 years, and and it was just, I had this like 24-hour, 48 span where like I was getting all these great emails, and then we were having this, and it's like I always feel like, and it's it's almost it is unfortunate that we, I think, as an individuals and it's human nature, that it often takes a loss to really put your purpose in perspective, or the things that matter. And I wish it didn't have to be that way. It's I don't think it always has to be like that, but I think it often just kind of amplifies it maybe. Um,
Yeah, I
and
mean
and I
that's life, I just quickly I always struggle with that concept in theory until like when it happens and stuff. But really, if you look at life, there's this, a lot of people talk about how there would be no light without the darkness and stuff, and
mm,
it's sort of that kind
totally.
of thing that I always try to keep in perspective, because there's so many things that so many people get upset about, and it seems like everywhere you look today somebody's mad about something. And is it really, I just been thinking about that too, stepping back, and it's like, getting out of that, getting more in that, gratitude mind first, thinking from that perspective always, because the little things that we run across every day, whether it be, somebody ranting online or pissing and moaning somewhere or whatever, and then I start getting in that mode, and then I start losing gratitude. But yeah, you're right, man. Losing a friend and losing a dog and things like that are just like so heavy that you have to look for reason, and then it kind of just reshapes the way you're looking at things, at least temporarily. And it's something that I, I hate to say you wish happened more, but it's just like to remember it more. And that's why I like talking about it, because that's the way you start, kind of branding it in your brain. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you said it. It's like you want to, you want to keep it top of mind. Something that you're always, and that's part of something that I do all, as part of recovery, is like you always make not always, you often will find yourself making like these gratitude lists. Like, what am I grateful for? And I know we've spent not a lot of time, but we've definitely touched on, in our podcast, the good, the bad, the ugly. Passion, is it, productive or poisonous? Our State of Triathlon podcast, and it definitely hasn't. I don't feel like at all we've been negative, but I feel like sometimes we've highlighted a little bit more of the what we want to see different. And this week, I've been like blown away on how great things actually are. And then that comes with a lot of things, just stories we've seen on Facebook, on our closed group, stories that people have been telling about, and this isn't this isn't a huge kudos to our podcast, but some of it has been, podcast related, as far as information they learn and how it's like affected their race or affected their life, or books people are going to read. In that, that not only I think are we accomplishing organically what we've kind of set out to do, but I got an email that I shared with you yesterday from a guy named Dave, and I'll share the story real quick, because I think it's like the epitome of what I love about this sport and what I would love to see more. And this is from Dave in Canada. He said, a few things I wanted to share with you. During the swim, and I'm not a very fast swimmer, I saw a woman who was freaking out and hyperventilating. I asked her if she was okay, and she told me she was having an anxiety attack. I told her to roll over on her back and told her how to kind of square up her breathing. She thanked him, and I said, "You're going to be okay." And she obviously thanked him for helping her. And then this is the, I guess, kind of funny part.
Yeah.
She later passed him on the swim, and then in passing thanked him again, which I think, and just like that's like a microcosm of exactly what I love about what's possible in the sport of triathlon. And he said, I see a lot of triathletes who don't take the time to talk to slower ones. For this race, I saw a lot of people cheering on others, and he even had somebody check on him when he rolled his ankle. But he said, I could binge your ear on about multiple things during that race that he's taken and making him even fall in love more with the sport. But I was like that, like the passing the helping and then having this person pass him, I think was just like the coolest story.
Yeah, that's pretty.
It's like it is like total removal of ego. And it's also, I guess, somewhat contradictory of what we had the guy post earlier in the Facebook group about, is in swimming, how do you deal with people, running into you and doing things, like, oh, well, Robin's racing, just keep swimming and don't take it personal. This is a little bit different, obviously, because it was somebody who was, who was struggling, but, and he said something else about it. He's like, I know just from listening to, I think, every single podcast that, you're not just coaching athletes, you're mentoring people to be better athletes, but also to think about other people in the sport. And while I hope that's true about what people get out of my coaching style, more of the mentoring part is mentoring people to be better athletes and impact other people in the sport, but also to mentor, hopefully mentor themselves better and think of themselves in a different, in better light. A better light, but an objective light where they can actually understand the gravity of how you can positively impact somebody. And I think you touched on it earlier, on our last podcast, and then on your post on Facebook about Pete. It's like, and it's always like the little things in life. And I didn't have a similar story my grandfather did. About the basketball story you told about Pete is my grandfather, who is like the person I've looked up to like most in my entire life. Like, he was even more than, to be honest with you, even my father. And he passed away in 2002 or 3, I think it was. And, he died. He was very successful and just like very humble, and just, he was incredible. If I'm anything like half as good as him, I'll have lived like an awesome life. And, I spoke at his funeral, and anyway, there was this gentleman that showed up to his funeral that nobody knew. I didn't recognize him. Literally no clue who he was. And he in Brentwood and Nashville back to that street. It was very, very the population was very, very Caucasian, mostly white people, and especially in the crowd we had at the funeral. And it was this older African American gentleman, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, sir, I don't believe I know you. I'm Robbie Bruce. I'm, George Ben's grandson." I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, I actually haven't seen or spoken to him in over 60 years, but I was the water boy for the football team, and he was the quarterback at Hillsborough High School." And, way back then, that was a big deal from a mostly all-white high school for an African-American to be involved. And he said that that he took me under his wing and made like the whole team kind of rally around him.
Wow.
And he said, 6 years. He said, I haven't spoken to him or seen him in this long, but I saw in the paper where he passed away, and I wanted to come and say thanks.
Wow, man.
And I was just like, gosh. And like the same story with Pete. It's like, you don't ever, and this isn't to put triathlon on this grandiose pedestal, but it's within the vacuum that we do these podcasts. And it's like little things like that really change your perspective on like what is the most important, that they often aren't these like grandiose actions and charity. It's like the day-to-day interactions you have with people, and that, like, those little things can totally change somebody's life, and what kind of encapsulates the opportunity we have every day, and the opportunity that I think we have in this sport, because it does give us the opportunity to reach so many different people of different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different financial commonalities. I mean, like different athletic abilities, and that's the biggest barrier I think we have now with where we are, is like there often is a huge difference in the conversations and the camaraderie between the pointy end and the back end. And that's just something I would love to change. And that's something I love about coaching, and I love coaching the person and then training the athlete. I don't think you can do You can't do one without the other, in my opinion, and do it successfully. And I think most of my athletes hopefully would agree is that, ours is a relationship, and it's about bettering, hopefully having a better impact on their life. Sometimes by addition, sometimes by abstraction, whether it's working out more, working out less, working out right. But anyway, we've had so many, emails and positive, things on Facebook and then with what's kind of gone on lately, I just wanted to say that, it's been really, really awesome to be a part of this journey and to hear people's stories, like even just one-off emails that we don't ever hear back from about, what they're getting from it. And then for me, it's the relationships, and like, yes, are they, 99% of them, are they virtual? Sure. But it's still that connection that we have, and have the opportunity to share with other people that makes this job like the dream job for me, and why I've loved, like, going at it full time. I just feel like it's what I'm supposed to do. And anyway, I mean, I'll digress to you, but I'm just so pumped, and I've been so positively motivated and inspired by our podcast listeners and by our closed group contributors and our email feedback. And then my athletes course is just like, there is a whole lot of good out there. And I think we're just like, just barely, the tip of the iceberg of what we can actually do.
That is, yeah, right on the tip of the iceberg too, because I was just thinking about, how this sport does attract so many different types of people. But I think at the core sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of us get into this sport because there's something we're trying to, I don't know, change or, to improve or whatever. And it's sort of this like all on, especially when you start, getting into Ironman. I think from my, 5 or 6 years being around this sport now, it's like it's sort of this push, and this drive. And I think a lot of us tend to be, either by nature or by the sport, tend to kind of spend a lot of time in isolation, for example. And it's kind of the irony or something, because I think that most of us really want to make connection, and we want to connect to something deeper inside of us or around us or with other people and things like that. But we tend to get sidetracked by these personal goals and personal bests and things like that. And then you kind of waver in and out of different groups of people based on, talent level or something like that. And performance and that sort of bounces around. But in the reality, it all comes back to, I think, that connection and wanting to feel better about what we're doing in general and in life. And there's a strong desire among triathletes, from what I've experienced, to do that. And the sport is a solo sport, but I think in some ways, the people involved, it's almost in a weird way like golf. It's like there's a lot of these people get involved in golf, and then they always say business deals are made on the golf course. And why is that? It's because they're out there shooting the shit and being themselves and kind of find their own place and being relaxed and enjoying a sport. And I guess golf can be super competitive too, but I feel like there's a casual nature about it that sometimes triathlon can't have, because it's so intense, and
Yeah.
and we miss the commisery part, a lot of times. And I think that's what we crave the most, and I think that's what human beings crave the most in general. And triathletes tend to be seekers of that, or like seekers of, people don't understand why we get in triathlon. Why do you, what? And it's just I don't know, there's just some kind of internal drive, I think. I mean, it brings these people together. I mean, back when I started, we had, 5 of us training for one race, and we were all different age groups and not really all that close, but we sort of came together somehow. And then you came together as our coach, and I've seen that nature in you from the beginning. We were all kind of going through our battles and fighting some demons and shit at the time, but it was that common core for something that was sort of elusive that was driving us. And now, as you're saying, when we've done, this is our 62nd podcast, and we are reaffirming that almost daily, that people want something more, and they want to, feel good about themselves and feel good about their community and their friends and people, and build relationships. And we're seeing that all the time. And that's why I agree with that tip of the iceberg thing, because I'm just, it's sort of reaffirming what we always knew, but maybe didn't quite understand, And when you start to understand something and see it a little clearer, that's when it becomes exciting, because it's not confusing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and it really isn't. It's so much more, I think, simple than I think we often try to make it. Is what I was kind of saying before. Is it's really often not the like big grandiose gesture or pre-planned like thing. It's just like the organic, everyday, natural progression of just like living life, being a good person, treating people the way you want to be treated, and being inclusive rather than exclusive. I think there's always fine lines in between both, where you have to take into consideration one or the other or other circumstances, but ultimately it's like, hey, and that's why I got into coaching, in general the first time, like way back when, like I had this father and son, this is like 2000, early, like mid 2000s, a father and son that were doing, Ironman Florida together, and needed a coach and wanted me to coach them. And so, that's when I started kind of learning on this journey. And, they still have this, because they ended up moving to Mexico and had to train from Mexico, and then they didn't live in Nashville anymore because this guy was in the missionary in the mission field. And so they moved to Mexico while they were training for this Ironman Florida, and I actually gave them my Ironman Florida. This is my first Ironman. They actually still have it, or at least I hope they still have it. They didn't like toss it, but they had my very first Ironman finisher medal.
Wow. Sold it for big bucks now.
Sold it. Yeah, I don't know about that. It's probably sitting in some pawn shop as a coaster. But I gave it to him because, I mean, and it's what I like it back. So hey, David and Colton Whited, if you're listening, give me my medal back. No, I'm just kidding. But because I was like, it represented to me. It was just a symbol of that journey I took and why I got into triathlons in the first place and what I'd overcome. And I gave it to him not as like here's this medal that will make you want to finish. It's like, this can already be your symbol, hopefully, of like, your journey and what it's going to look like. Because I think when you see, like for me, like when we see medals and, finisher medals or podiums or whatever it is, like, you don't really see, in my opinion, like the place you got or what you finished. It's just like a material version of that specific journey that you went on. And so it's always different, because I mean, think about it. Like there's more than 2,000 finisher medals handed out at most Ironman events, and they all look the same, like on the surface. But if you asked, every single person who got one, it would look completely different. I mean, they're essentially, in my opinion, they're like snowflakes. Like none of them are exactly the same, because you did them all for a different reason. They all meant something different in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Because for me, it's a lot like music and songs. Like I have these certain songs that I always incorporate to a certain part of my life. And what I was going through at the time, because I love music, and so I think that's what these journeys do for people. And again, that's why I got into the sport, is that, and you said it earlier, it's I think a great reason, one of the million reasons it's a great journal, is that like if you go back and look at like these races that you did, I think it's always really cool to look back on actually not the day you did the race, but when you signed up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you look at like the surrounding weeks or even months, preceding your actual sign up, you'll learn so much about why you actually sign up in the first place. Like what was going on in your life? Was it positive? Was it negative? Were you looking for an outlet? Were you trying to make changes? So many different things. And your story is a lot of that. You were looking to making these huge changes, and it was like this journey and decision. And essentially, signing up for Ironman Wisconsin has changed the total trajectory of your life.
Without a
And
doubt.
yeah, and so it wasn't necessarily the finish. It was signing up, and that's why I just think is why this sport, in a million different ways, is so awesome.
Well, yeah, and we've documented that. I think it was we called it from couch to Iron Man at 50 or something. It
Mm-hmm.
sort of has my backstory, but you just brought up your first Iron Man, and we haven't really dove into that too much about your why at that time. I mean, give us a little background about
Yeah,
why you got, because you went
yeah.
through some. I mean, it isn't like,
This is way before I even like went through like my deepest valley. It was like
yeah, that's
I was
something.
like I was like flatlining. That's a story for another book. But no, it's neat, I think, and I'll share these like two little pieces of data quickly. Is I think that it's really common when you see somebody I've accomplished some pretty cool things in the sport, but I'm by no means like the greatest, fastest non-pro on the circuit, by no means. But I think you always tend to think that people that are slow are always going to be slow, and the people that were fast have always been fast. Like they've just always been fast, or they're just more athletic. And like my first Ironman was Ironman Florida. I think it was 2010 or 11 or something like that. My time was like 14:20. And this last year I did, in Florida is literally like the easiest course on the planet. Ocean swim. This year it was flat. The year I did it was flat. Pancake bike, pancake flat run, cool temps, like best case scenario. Then this last year I did a 10, 30, and a little bit of change at Wisconsin. So almost a 4 hour difference.
Oh man, that's incredible.
The year I did Ironman Florida, I did Gulf Coast, one of my favorite races of all time, and I can't wait to go back. My first 70.3 time was a 6:12. Yeah. Last year I did a 4:35. So I didn't just like come into the sport like some like super. Was I athletic? Sure, but I wasn't by any means seasoned. But I wanted to share that first, just so people can, for those out there, they're like, oh, I'm always going to be slow, or you were just fast because you're just fast. It's like a lot of people work pretty daggum hard, and the biggest thing I think you take from that is how long it took to get fast, and then once you get to like a certain point, getting minutes is like really really hard once you get to like the pointy end. But anyway, so my first one was it was Ironman Florida. And it was more of I was still on the end of my I was so in love with the sport because of what it had, because of how much weight I had lost. Because I got originally, and I've shared this before in a couple podcasts, but I got into the sport originally as a depressed college dropout who weighed, for me, like 200, close to 230 pounds. I'm a 6 foot frame, so that's definitely a little more heavier than I am now. Now I'm about 170 and change. But that's what it represented to me at that point. It was like, man, this sport is like, and this event has done so much for me, just in training and life. Is it made me want to go back to school. After I had dropped out originally and went back, it was during the same time I went back, and so it was, yeah. I mean, that's the reason I did it. I chose Florida because it was easier. I mean, I didn't have any like disillusions of like tackling the hardest one off the bat, because I was like, man, like I'm gonna need all the help I can get. And it was pumped. I remember my mom like crying when I finished, and It was definitely cool. It was one of the coolest. Uh, Definitely one of the coolest ones I've done. And you'll always remember your first triathlon. It's definitely not my favorite finish. My favorite one, uh, my two favorite ones are definitely Wisconsin this last year, and then Louisville. The year you and I did it together in 2014, I think, when it was scorching hot. Yeah, those two are just like, they mean so much. Not about the time I had, but just because of what I had gone through leading up to it. It was just like those celebration races, and that's why I love it so much too, because I think they're all that in a way. If you remember that, because I think we so often get lost, and this goes back to, like, the whole theme of the podcast about gratitude is I think we just lose sight of it so much, like why we're doing it and all the good that comes from it. We get so caught up in comparison and data and not being good enough or not being fast enough. And you're like, man, like, what about all the other stuff? It's like that's doing so many good things for my life. And look at these people and friendships I've made. Like, that is, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the greatest part of coaching for me is the relationships and friendships I have with, like, people all across the country, and even in Canada now. It's like I get to, like, connect, and it's like that changes positively my life, and I wouldn't have it without being on this journey. And so I think that, again, that's something we often kind of lose and I think, going back to what we talked about last podcast, and there were a couple of quotes I think people liked, or the previous two, where, one was, race on the horse you trained on. And then the other one, we talked about this last one, was, be okay where you are. And I think that's like in a just kind of a one word, one phrase, like one of the biggest things that kind of steals joy from our journey and process is that we try to rush through it. It's like, what is the rush? Like, yeah, we all want to get better, and we're going to get better on our own time, but why? I think at the end, if you said, all right, well, this journey was so amazing, what if I could extend it for 2 or 3 more years? What would you choose? Well, I would for sure choose to have it go longer, because it's been so awesome. So it's like, why do we want to rush through something that's supposed to be this, and not just supposed to be, but can be this really awesome journey of, like, finding things out about yourself and connecting with other people and becoming healthier and changing your lifestyle. Like, why would you want to not diminish, but why would you want to shorten or minimize the magnitude of that opportunity by rushing through it?
I think it's a great question. And again, it's back to this thing always with me, is that sometimes I do impulse decisions, and, like, push at them just because. And that, if I went up and did Muncie right now, for example, that's a perfect example. It would just be sort of because I want to go up there and I want to beat my time or whatever, but I don't have that why. Back to that, like you're saying, yeah, those are both great races with you for a lot of different reasons, that we had gone through a lot of stuff together. You, of course, on the heavy end of it, but it meant so much to me. And so my first one did too. And when my mom and brother show up at these races, and when Pete came to these races, it was just like, that became the reason in a lot of ways, is like, who's there and who's hanging out and who am I with? And, you can't, it just becomes such a burden to always do something for yourself, and that's kind of that, I feel like in a lot of ways, and maybe it's just because that there's so many more people out there talking, but this whole, get yours kind of attitude that seems to proliferate. And I hope it doesn't really proliferate the younger people as much as I think it does, but, it's always about kind of getting your attention, and it's just always so empty, and if I can relate that to the podcast, I got to say, honestly, I mean, we've been doing this because we love talking about it, and it was a good way for us to keep in touch. And we knew that there was a lot of commonalities in our philosophy, and I think we've been exploring them. And it has never been about look at me and look at us, and that's why it's been enjoyable, right? Because We're not all, I don't feel like we're, and I think this, is echoed with a lot of people that listen because it's sort of our, we just kind of explore, and it's not like some, produced radio show that's always trying to grab your attention and, come up with the next hook and all that sort of thing. I mean, we don't, totally schlep it, but we try to come up with genuine things to talk about that we're interested in, and that we hope other people are interested in. We think they are, and that becomes our why to keep going on this. I mean, 62 podcasts every Monday and Thursday is no joke, really. I mean, I'm pretty proud of that, almost as proud of that as anything. That we've kept going.
Yeah,
So we must have
consistency, man.
and we haven't made a dime, right? So that is a big deal, and I think we've found our why on this thing. It's just because of the community that seems to be interested and that we're building, and that has to translate into races. There has to be more than just. I mean, let's face it. 99.9% of us will never be elite athletes. That's just a whole another sphere of commitment and, frankly, probably isolation that I have no interest in, but so you're always walking that fine wire of like with me trying to get to another level, but trying to remember why you came to, and kind of, it's like that thing I said last time about, after a funeral, you just kind of do your best to transcend it and include the good stuff and the good memories. And so you want to move up, but you don't want to blow up the whole reason for everything along the way.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on this with Brad Stolberg and Steve Maxwell. Their book is be better at life by thinking of yourself less. We talked about that part where, the research says that if you're basically, that it's that power of self transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
It's like research is like, the less we think about ourselves, the better we become, which is like what you said, like the total opposite of where I feel we are going as like a human race. It's all about me, I, and not about you, and then not about we. And that's where you can become so great. And we get this all the time, from emails to text messages I get from the athletes that I'm privileged enough to coach. It's like, sorry for the rant, but you're the only person that actually cares about what I do. It's like, or the only person that I know to email or text or call or whatever to listen to, because nobody else gets what I'm doing. And so you understand and they won't, and it's like, but so that's what it is. It's like that power of connection. And I think why I'm so drawn to, what we are doing and have done via our podcast. And, as well as, like that's why I got into coaching, because you think more about other people, than you do about yourself. And so it helps me tremendously as well in like a million different ways. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, a great way to wrap it up, is like, whether it's training or racing or your work life, personal life, whatever it is, like in the journey, and especially even the journey you're on, like it's always more fun to take people with you, and you can't do that unless you're part of doing something for them than just yourself. Because nobody wants to hop on board with somebody who is only in it for themselves or isn't willing to help out or be a good example. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I think that, if you're listening, that's a, something I would encourage us all to keep doing. Because most of the people I think that listen to this podcast do that. And that's what, has made this so rewarding.
Absolutely, man. And I guess just one... that's, going to your best friend's, one of your best friend's funerals. And I went up there, and that was one of the takeaways I had was this, I looked around that church, and there were hundreds of people there for my buddy, and it's like we had our relationship, and there was 2 or 3 friends of mine that would kind of connect on these road trips and stuff, but I didn't really see his life, but you just had the sense that, Big Petey was always about that, other people. And Like, he and someone, and I wish I remembered more of it, but like one of his friends got up there and they found his morning mantra and they read it out at the funeral, and it was just like, man, that is totally how he lived, and it was all about, doing what he knows he can do and being confident, but always bringing people along for the ride, and it's all about that, So I was so moved by that, and I was so happy, and to see how many people he touched, and that's what that's what it's all about,
Yep.
and it's so easy to forget that.
Oh,
And
for sure.
man, I do, and that's what I guess I'm the blessing of doing this sort of thing and talking to you all the time is that we have to remind each other, and it's a good, before the podcast today, I was kind of in a bad spot, but now, but that was what I was thinking about, but you can only stew on that so much, you can only stew on that yourself on a, 4-hour bike ride so much, and you can't figure it out by yourself usually either. That's the other part.
Exactly.
So that's the good part of having a coach like you, and that's the sort of thing I always saw in you. Even though we were, like I said, both going some, really navigating some tricky waters at the time, and it was at that core value that we always connected, and that's why this is even happening right now. Really.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, man.
It's a good stuff. I'll finish up with a few house cleaning or housekeeping items. I forgot to mention this on our last podcast, but I think I may have announced it on our public Crushing Iron Facebook page. We had a lot of awesome new additions to our C26 triathlon team. So I got to give a big shout out to Summer and Chris Scandridge, who live in Texas. They're a couple who have only done one sprint triathlon, and got their eyes set on a far distant goal of 2018 Ironman Texas. They live right there in Houston, so looking forward to being part of their journey, as well as Angela Peterson, who is about to rock it at Wisconsin 70.3 this weekend. She lives in Missouri, and is also doing Ironman Wisconsin later this year. And then Jamie Lopez, who is a spouse of another athlete that I have, Kate Lopez. He's a super awesome guy. They're both cool. I call them the Spanish Armada as a couple. And he's doing Muncie Olympic this weekend, and then Ironman Wisconsin late in the year. So big ups to them, and appreciate them allowing me the opportunity to coach them. And again, two things, we're doing, I'm allowing in some beta testers for the initial launch of our video swim analysis. I've had quite a few inquiries already. I probably have a spot for maybe just 2 or 3 more. So if you're interested in that, please email me at c26coach@gmail.com. And if you are at all interested in becoming part of our C26 Triathlon team or club, or looking at being coached, or just want to know what it includes, what it costs, what the details are, again, email me at the same c26coach@gmail.com, and I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah. How's our camp doing?
Dude, our camp is good. Camp is real solid. As you saw, we've added our first camp here is July 13th to the 16th. Later on this week or over the weekend, I'll be launching the date of our second one. Had a bunch of cool new additions to the first camp with one of our good friends and C26 alumni, Elise Galagos. Who's a 70.3 Worlds qualifier and 2-time Kona qualifier. She's coming into town from Florida, going to work out with us, help me with the presentation and Q&A one night. We got group discounts with Nashville Running Company. And, another cool thing is Brad Stolberg is going to Skype in, do a video Skype with our campers to talk about his book, Peak Performance, and then any other cool, training, smart-wise, training options. And I got one more I'm working on that I think will be pretty cool as well. But, the feedback I've gotten is camp's going, the itinerary looks great. I'm super pumped to have these people come in town and work with everyone. And if you need information or want information on the July camp or the August date, email me as well.
C26coach@gmail.com.
That's it.
All right. Anything else? Join our close Facebook group and get in there and start talking. And
yeah, lots of good stuff going on.
Tons of people racing this weekend, and lots of encouragement and feedback on people, for people who haven't done the course, and others helping each other out with little tips and things like that. So that's really cool. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Until next time. We've got a special one planned next time, don't we? Wait, no, we don't. But I'm sure it'll be special. It's special in its own way, man. It's kind of like your kids. They're special in their own way. Yeah. All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Okay, buddy. See you, dude.